Starting up.
Yeah,
Should be live soon.
do it.
Go record here just for fun. Well, hey guys, welcome to another gathering opportunity to spend time together. Uh yeah, we're doing this live on Rumble. If anyone in the chat could give me a loud and clear, everything coming through, all sound good. I guess I can check on mine.
Yes.
Yep. All right, everything's coming through. OMG Life 33. Hey, welcome. And yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the confirmation. And yeah, this will be a part two, a continuation of what we did a couple weeks ago on the religious agenda. So we've got this wise man sitting next to me, Darth Phaedrus, who has been tirelessly working to put together a document or a series of documents to go over what are religions to kind of set the groundwork for for later exploration as we go deeper into specific religions. It's important that we understand just what is this thing called religion. That this word gets thrown around quite a lot, and we've grown up with it, whether maybe not directly involved with it, but you have been involved with it in some way or another, just because it permeates all of society. So it's good that we really understand this concept and what was it formed for. So today is going to be as I mentioned, a continuation of the last presentation. I believe I put the former link in the show notes. If I didn't, I will make sure that's there. So if you are just tuning in to this one for the first time, make sure you go watch that first one first, because we'll be following up on the concepts that we've laid out there, and this will be a follow-up. So
Oh yeah, that this second section will make no sense whatsoever unless you have the proper foundation. Religion is a complex ideal, and it's you can't describe it in one little meme. You know, it's a good meal to understand it and cover it properly. This is not a topic for somebody that doesn't want to think hard.
yep. Yeah, so make sure you go review that one first. And yeah, I think we'll just it's not
I mean,
spend
we could do a quick review, like take a quick 5 minute review. I don't know,
I mean, if you can do it in like 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Wow. Yeah, no, I can't do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
What's the first? What's the first one?
Yeah, just watch the first one. We don't need to spend time going on this.
All
We
right.
want this to be a comprehensive, package. So let's just jump right into today's presentation. Um, and yeah, if you want to just read the document from the last presentation too, that's listed on the website post for that, so you can review it. So today is going to be similar to last time, where we're just going to be sharing screen, and Darth is going to be going over the presentation he put together, and I'll just be sitting here saying random things here and there, and um, yeah, we'll go forward in that way. So without further ado, let's just share the document and jump right into it. Hey Roseanne, hey Cheryl, thanks for being here today. So here we go. Oh yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to relay them in the chat, um, and I'll relay them and we can answer them. So if anything comes up as we're going through, just make sure to shout out the question. So take it away.
All right. This is the beginning. We're about halfway through, I believe.
Okay, so this is still okay, so it's all one document.
It's all one document.
Great.
Yes.
All right, I'll get that updated. So yeah, I mean, I guess just to do a summary, we can just show
All
the
right. So this all started because somebody wanted wanted me to do an analysis on Islam. What's your thoughts on Islam? And the thing is, Islam itself is part of a subset of other ideas called religion. So you cannot know what Islam is unless you know what religion itself is. And it turns out that religion is really it's just a program for controlling people, and that everyone has programs in them. Uh, God had to program himself in order to create anything. So there's all these programs flying left and right and in every which direction, uh, changing the way that we see things, changing the way that we feel about things, controlling our actions. And the more that you understand how these stories affect us and how these stories control us, the more you can navigate through this maze of stories. So there's people that tell the stories, and then there's people that follow the stories or that repeat it. So there's programmers, and then there's the programmed, and religion is the program, and there's different components. And one of the things that we came to a realization in our last show is that religions just don't spring up naturally. The same way that a large building doesn't just spring up naturally. Religions are complex structures, and if they're not built well, they'll collapse under their own weight. If they're not maintained, if they're not funded, if they're not built by someone that knows what they're doing. Like most of us can't build a skyscraper. We don't have the technical expertise. And a religion is every bit as complicated as a skyscraper. So there are various components to religion. And once you understand what it is that you're seeing, then you can take the building apart and you can see what the true purpose of it is. And what most religions are is they're really just prisons. They're prisons that are designed to look like palaces.
Spirit prisons.
Yeah, they're spirit prisons. They're prisons that are designed to so the inmates don't realize that they're entrapped. And they're prisons that have work crews because the religions are all performing a work. There's a task, there's an objective that needs to be done. And that's what the last week was all about, was looking at the actual components of religion so that we can see past what it is, because there's what the religion says that it is, and then it's what it really does, right? Um, and and so it was a very detailed analysis last week.
Yeah.
And I think where we actually looked at the entire document of what we had typed out at that time. So I think where we were now was part 6 about dealing with the programmed.
Okay. So we've defined the programmed. Yep. And we've defined people who might be within the
Right.
programmed.
We said, well, okay, well,
The signs of,
yep.
yep.
Like if somebody suddenly isolates themselves,
Signs
well, they
someone
may
has been
have, yeah,
captured. Yep.
yep, we looked at all that.
Okay.
So now we are here interacting with the religiously programmed.
And this is really important, especially as we're going through this awakening, because those, I mean, the religious programs are all going to fail at some point or another. So in the meantime,
Yes.
as these religious programs are still working, maybe not at full capacity, but still at a heightened capacity, it's important to know these abilities of interacting with the religiously programmed.
Yeah. How do we move and talk to these people?
Hmm.
Let's start.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
let's go into
Okay.
it.
Section 6, interacting with the religiously programmed. The first religiously programmed person that will be interacted with is highly likely to be oneself. Virtually everyone alive is running some sort of subconscious religious programming that is distorting our Christic self to some degree. Before there can be peaceful, reasonable, orderly, and powerful relationships outside of the self with either individuals or collective religious institutions, peace, reason, order, and power must be installed within. To have a good relationship with others, one must have a good relationship with oneself. Before we can see anyone or anything else clearly and accurately, we must first see ourselves clearly and accurately, because we see everything through our own eyes,
Mhm.
right? What would be the point of examining any idea, like religion, if we're in a delusional state? How are we supposed to see anyone else clearly while being a distortion of who we really are? Is it even possible to see the truth? And if we can get along well enough without it, why would we even try to? At first glance, our situation seems precarious. We start with a questionable origin. Are we even Christic? From there, we enter into a world in which not everyone is speaking truth, and some are even deliberately, effectively speaking deceptions for their own predatory reasons. These falsehoods further corrupt our internal processes to the point where we may see things that are not there, not see things that are there, and not be who we really are. So, what chance do we even have of achieving clarity? The spiritual law states the destination is always the origin. Therefore, we must start from a point of goodness and truth in order to arrive at goodness and truth. But where do we find this starting point? The situation would be completely lost and hopeless if not but for one thing, our true nature. Deep down at the very center of everyone's very being is our true nature, the Christ. The Christ is who we really are. And the Christ always knows two things. One, what is good, and two, what is true. The Christ is unmovable and unalterable, so we can trust it. Even people who are not very Christic at all are still Christic at least a little bit. Our true nature, the Christ, is therefore available to everyone, everywhere, at all times. There's only one cost. We have to pay attention. The sum of all anti-Christic, parasitic religious programming is this: distract us from the Christ within, conceal the Christ within, deny the Christ within, forget the Christ within, and alienate from the Christ within. Then consume all who forget who they truly are. See, while we're unified with the Christ, we're not vulnerable because the Christic essence protects that which is precious. So in order for them to get to us, they have to separate us from the Christ,
Mhm.
which is who we really are. So they have to make us forget who we are. That's the point of the whole programming. Therefore, the trick or key to seeing through the illusions of anti-Christic religious programming is to measure all things against the Christ within. The Christ within is always right and capable of overcoming and correcting all defective religious programming. So how do we pay the price of paying attention? We do this with our hearts. Our hearts are directly connected to the Christ, so it is of the most vital importance to protect our heart, just as a surgeon or artist protects their hands. If we continuously abuse our hearts, it will likely become very difficult to find the Christ within again. It's even possible to become so defiled, so alienated from our true self, that the Christ condemns and rejects the false persona and the perverted body and just leaves, taking reincarnation with it. We've all seen these empty, unreasonable, anti-Christic husks with faithless, dead eyes, devoid of all hope, inhabited and possessed by the most cruel and inhuman demons. This is a terrible, excruciating, horrible, horrifying state to be in and to be avoided at all costs.
That's the Walking Dead or the zombies, the
Yeah,
Reavers, the same sort of allegories that pop up to show these anti-Christic husks, people who have abdicated all sense of self or as much as possible to barely even exist any longer. And they act as like a vacuum for anyone who does exhibit the Christic behavior like a parasite does, just feeding off of that.
yeah. This concept is validated by the metaphysics. So, like when the energy is positive, then the bions form symbiotic life. But if you agitate the bions to a certain point, eventually they invert, and then instead of forming symbiotic life, they start forming parasitic life.
Mm. Yeah, people ask me a little side note, but people ask me what I think about like mosquitoes and ticks and things of that nature. I feel like these things will eventually dematerialize
Correct.
once we get out of this parasitic nature. They're a byproduct of that energy permeating this experience. So when we get rid of our parasitic nature, or at least address it, then there won't be as much of a need for that to express itself in the physical realm.
Yeah, that sort of aspect of reality would become severely curtailed and to a point where it's hardly even noticeable.
Right.
This is why there can be no compromise with any anti-Christic ideal or programming. Personal integrity must be maintained even to death and beyond. To be true to ourselves, to be true to the Christ that we are, is glorious heavenly bliss, but the alternative is inevitable, pathetic, hellish agony and misery. To make matters even more critical and important, if we possess enough consciousness, awareness, and free will to even be making this choice, our nature and choices is being reflected and remanifested throughout all the sleeping masses that resonate with your specific persona. It's not just your future at stake, but everyone else hitched to your train of consciousness. Just as God is everyone and everything all at the same time, and the Christ is also living in many different bodies, in many different places, in many different times, all at the same time, so too it is with the most conscious of humans. Even if you're unknown by the masses, or with no political position, and you seem powerless by the standards of the anti-Christic system, if one holds spiritual power and awareness, then untold numbers of masses spontaneously mirror your actions and nature. Lose your temper, and somewhere in space and time, war breaks out. Stand firm against a bully in your life, and somewhere tyranny is overthrown. The spiritually ascended act as the rudder on a ship for humanity. Remember, we're not just individuals, we're also the collective.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, and that's a because people will also ask like, what can I do? What can I be doing to help this great awakening? What can I be doing to help this the world when I feel powerless? And if you remember things like this, then everything that you do becomes extremely important. Everything that every interaction we have with other beings is an incredibly powerful moment. So step into that and take
Yep.
take everything with great importance.
So let's say you're struggling with drinking, right? It's not just you that's going to hold firm or give in. You pick up that drink and you drink it. Somewhere there's like hundreds of people that are also going to give in because you gave in,
Mm,
and you're part of the collective consciousness. Like you could be the person that you holding integrity is what makes this world better.
nice.
It's we live in a holographic reality. It's
Hmm.
just the way that it is.
Yeah. Roseanne gave some gematria in the chat. She said, "You cannot see anything clearly unless you see yourself clearly." So that was a quote from the document. That comes to 708, 708, which also comes out to accept the word of God as truth and the love of Jesus Christ as the way, 708. And then having greater access to the multidimensional aspects of yourself comes to 708.
That's nice.
Awesome.
Now it has been established that we have both the ability, motive, and duty to perceive goodness and truth through the self within, the Christ, by way of the heart. What does this feel like? How is this performed? Being the Christ is a skill set that must be practiced and developed just like any other. Through practice, one can literally become the Christ. The heart is the portal or gateway to your truest self, the Christ, and faith and gratitude are the keys that unlock this portal. By the way, Jesus had to go through this process. Like Jesus had to become the Christ. That's, I mean, that's a forbidden, storyline in history, but that he wasn't the only one.
Hmm.
So, and becoming the Christ is something that has been done many times and will be done many times again. Anything one man can do, another can do.
Hmm.
So this is not undoable. Okay, so making the faith key. The faith key has three parts. Knowing that goodness and truth are real and all powerful. Knowing that you are good and true and actually being good and true. Knowing that goodness and truth exert actual, real, intelligent force on the physical plane. Practice believing that goodness and truth are real and that you are good and true. Practice believing that goodness and truth are all powerful, and that because you are a child of goodness and truth, that goodness and truth are acting on your behalf. Tell yourself this over and over, endlessly, until it becomes effortless and without resistance from the persona. Actually speak it aloud. Even if it takes days or weeks, do not give up. Practice every day, even if just for a little bit. Look for goodness and truth in your life. Practice being a child of the good and true by actually being good and true. Find at least one good thing every day. This can be made simple by doing and being the good thing that you find. Practice seeing at least one good thing in others. If a mistake is made, acknowledge it, accept that it happened, and refocus your attention on the practice of actually being good and true. Remember, all attention strengthens, even negative attention. So maximum attention should be given to the practice of being good and true. If a bad experience happens, and it will, acknowledge and accept it, then refocus on good things that have happened. Make lists of good things that have happened and the good things that you have done if needed.
Well, and I mean, I get what you're saying, bad experience, but you can even reframe it to where you don't even have bad experience, quote unquote, bad experiences, because every experience can be transmuted into that
Right.
good
That's
one.
that's the art of transmutation.
So,
Yes.
so if you get really good at this, then you don't even have bad experiences anymore. And
Correct.
what somebody else might view it as a bad experience, but that's where you transmute that into, oh no, this is a challenge here for my growth. This is something that's strengthening me. This is an opportunity for me to do better or to see an area of myself that I wasn't seeing quite clearly. So that's a whole nother level of alchemy to and then there are no bad experiences that you don't they don't even exist in your reality any
Right.
longer.
Yeah, that's next level faith. When you can hold on to these three beliefs, even in the face of opposition, discomfort, or misfortune, your belief has matured into knowledge. You now know these things to be true. Your persona has been transformed. You have taken control of your own programming and have drawn closer to yourself, the Christ. Realizing these truths actually makes them real. Goodness and truth have been conjured and summoned by the force of your will, by your choice, and are now manifest into the physical construct of reality and exert actual, real, positive physical force on yourself, others around you, and the objects around you. Record when things are changed per your request or for your benefit.
Yeah, beautiful. And I know we'll get more specifically into various religions, but I just wanted to bring up how apparent it is to see how the religious programming for, say, take mainstream Christianity, where the Christ is something that's external and your internal reality, how you view yourself, is this worthless sinner. So even doing goodness, embodying that goodness and truth, it's not nearly as palpable or powerful because you're not even identifying with it. You're putting the Christ in some external place that you have to worship and grovel towards, and then yourself is the worthless sinner. That so it's like it's so counterproductive to this process to even have those beliefs ingrained within you, which of course, as the primary objective of the antichristic nature, necessary for them to get us to believe these things. But just wanted to
No,
throw that thing in there.
that's excellent. Also, when you get good at exerting positive spiritual force around you, eventually things get to the point where, kind of like what Q says, at what point do things become so improbable so as to be impossible? After a while, you start to like achieve this blessed state where it's just statistically inconsistent that this many things would go right for you. I mean, some things have to go wrong, right? No. When you got faith, you can push that probability wave to the point where almost everything goes your way. And other people will notice and they may resent it. Like, why do things always go right for you? Why can't things go right for me? And they don't understand that no, it's just it's your faith. But that's why it's important, because every time you record when something has been changed for your benefit. It just makes your strength, your faith stronger. You have now manufactured the key of faith.
I think we skipped this one.
Did we?
Yeah.
Realizing these truths actually makes them real. Goodness and truth have been conjured. I didn't say that yet. All right.
Oh,
Let's say it again.
maybe you
Why
did.
not?
Okay.
When you hold on to these three beliefs, even in the face of opposition, discomfort, and misfortune, your belief has matured into knowledge. You now know these things to be true. Your persona has been transformed. You have taken control of your own programming and have drawn closer to yourself, the Christ. Realizing these truths actually makes them real. Goodness and truth have been conjured, summoned by the force of your will, by your choice, and are now manifest into the physical construct of reality and exert actual, real, positive physical force on yourself, others around you, and the objects around you. Record when things are changed per your request or for your benefit. You have now manufactured the key of faith. No one could do it for you. You had to do it for yourself. The key of faith is incredibly expensive, valuable, and important. Your very life now depends on this key. There's no going back now. It may provoke and enrage anti-Christic personas around you and must be protected even to death. Regularly inspect and recreate the key of faith. Make it as strong as possible. Do not allow anyone to take it from you or lose it under any circumstances, as this is usually an extremely painful experience. Making another key of faith may be extremely difficult, but is almost always possible. Getting assistance from someone who may help, but they cannot do it for you. If you lose your key of faith, make another or find it with utmost speed and effort. Do not delay, even if your persona resists. And if you lose your faith, your persona is probably going to resist. So you have to start making that new key, even if you don't want to. Do that work, even if it doesn't seem like it's happening. Do that work of making that faith again. Pay close attention to the feelings in your body when holding the key, the faith key strongly. It should be powerful, yet relaxing. Remember it carefully and practice the feeling of faith in your body, as you'll need to use it later. Making the gratitude key. Because there's three things you need to summon the Christ. You need the two keys and then the portal that's in your heart. So this is the second key. Making the gratitude key is a similar process to making the key of faith. The two keys are closely related. Many find that making the key of faith, they also find the gratitude key. Some find that they must pause making faith and focus solely on gratitude first. In truth, it's almost impossible to make real progress in faith without genuine gratitude. The Antichrist knows that thankfulness or gratitude is half the battle of becoming the Christ it fears, and so does everything it can to get us to accept ungrateful and ungraceful personas. Many have learned to accept the antichristic traumatic state of being habitually greedy, closed-fisted, hypercritical, anxious, and dissatisfied. Pride is often used to mask this disgusting and vile state. Gratitude has a few parts: curiosity, intentional focus, deliberate calmness, generosity, verbal and written expression. Gratitude is when one has attained the deliberate, persistent, and stable state of thankful graciousness. It's not a momentary, brief feeling that is kept to oneself. An evil person may be momentarily pleased or relieved that they received a gift, but they will not express genuine thanks to another for that gift. In their mind, it was not received, but taken, gotten, or acquired. They will not give anything in return or even thanks, unless it is in the hopes of getting more in the future. Furthermore, they will not be satisfied with what they did receive, but will immediately hunger and lust for more.
So it's not virtue signaling. It's not putting on a face
Yeah,
that
you
you're
can't fake gratitude. You got to do it for real.
right. Like this paragraph says, if it's done, we've been trained to be extremely transactional with everything that we do. So most of the time in society, when people thank somebody else, they only do it because they would either feel weird if they didn't because they're afraid of being judged, or they're trying to get something
Yeah, they're
from,
doing it perfunctory.
right. Or even, yeah, exactly. So just, yes, a very, very important thing to note.
Yep. You can't fake the keys. If you have a fraudulent key, the portal won't open and Christ won't manifest.
Right. It's like what we talked about in the Gospel of Thomas reading, where it was like all will be known. There's essentially you can't hide anything. There's no way to fake this process in any which way because the Christ sees all. The Christ is you. So if you know, then
Yeah,
then you know. And so,
he's watching what you do through
right,
your own eyes.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Gratitude is when a person who is gracious willingly and happily expresses thankfulness and is content with what is received or experienced. It's closely related to pleasure. A person who is thankful experiences genuine pleasure, while a person who is not graceful refuses to do so.
Graceful or grateful? Well, I mean, it's similar, but either way, it would fit.
I think I meant graceful.
Okay.
Yeah, but grateful also works. They're clearly very closely associated words. They both have the GRA
Right.
in them. So you can't experience genuine gratefulness unless you have that divine grace within you.
Yeah.
All the good attributes are originating from the Christ within.
Yeah. And gratitude, you could look at it as a godly, righteous attitude.
Yep.
So have that godly, righteous attitude.
Yep. Making the gratitude key. Practice being curious. Redo old things, but do them slower and more intentionally. See if there is something in them that you missed that is pleasurable. Try doing it a different way to see if there is some new pleasure that you missed. If you find that you enjoy doing things the same way, then make a mental note of that. But do not use that as an excuse to avoid pleasure. Some personas avoid pleasure as an excuse for toxicity and bitterness. Actually savor doing the things the same way if you really do. Intentionally try new good things while being good and test them for pleasure. There will be plenty of opportunities to experience pleasure while being good. You don't have to go outside the boundaries of being good to experience pleasure. Pay special attention to all pleasurable experiences. Do not rush past experiences thoughtlessly, but mindfully sift them for pleasure. Do not use the pursuit of pleasure as an excuse for badness. Keep a log of all the blessings you have experienced and review it from time to time. Especially note the connection between pleasure and goodness and truth. When it is good to do so, repeat good experiences.
Yeah, that's key in here of ensuring goodness is within the pleasure because pleasure by itself can be pursued in all sorts of different directions. But if you have good as that foundation, then you won't veer off
Yeah.
this.
This is actually one of the inverse of this idea is one of the key elements of false religions. They
Right.
limit your access to pleasure. Uh, don't eat this plant, don't eat that plant, don't drink this, don't do that. Because they want the religion to be the sole source of pleasure or in control of pleasure.
Right. And also to create the swing effect, knowing that
Yeah,
we are designed to drawn towards pleasure. Yeah.
yeah. So, and a lot of people that have been traumatized by religion have difficulty experiencing pleasure.
Yeah.
Keep a log. Let me see what is good. Okay. Pleasure is the key to gratitude and the whole point of existence. Remember that heaven is just bliss or intense joy. However, pleasure is just the first half of gratitude. The second half is expressing thankfulness outwardly for receiving gifts. Without thankfulness, simple pleasure is selfishness and antichristic in nature. In your log, keep track not just of pleasures you've experienced, but also of the thanks you have given for them. Make sure that everyone who has been kind to you has received the proper gratitude in return. This includes close family members performing duties and responsibilities. When giving thanks, be sure to have good manners and do so willingly and without reluctance. A thankful and gracious person is kind, compassionate, warm, gentle, generous, has good manners, is hospitable and agreeable, even to those marginalized by the Antichrist. Because gratitude is also content, a gracious person is happy in the present moment and does not look for satisfaction in the past or future. Resist jealousy, self-pity, anger, resentment, and blame. Do not abuse or neglect others or allow yourself to be abused or neglected. Try not to cause trouble for others. Make it a habit to thank others and the Christ within. Make lists of pleasures you're thankful for and say the gratitude out loud. Dedicate a time and location to practicing gratitude. When one has learned to and acquired the nature of seeing the world in terms of pleasure, when they easily feel pleasure and reflexively, naturally, and happily give outward thanks for goodness they have successfully made the key of gratitude. Pay close attention to the feelings in your body when being gracious. Remember and practice gratitude diligently. When you could be thankful even while you're experiencing pain, when you could be thankful even when things are difficult, that's when you've mastered, that's when you have the key.
Mm-hmm.
If your car runs out of gas and now you got to walk to the gas station, but you're thankful you got a gas tank. So you're in a good mood because, man, what if I didn't have this gas tank and there's $10 in my pocket? Whew, I'm so blessed to have this, $10 in the tank. See, that's gratitude.
Yeah.
And a person who doesn't have this key, it doesn't matter how much they have, they'll never be thankful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what helps me is just help having gratitude for the experience itself. Even the contrasting, not as pleasant experiences, because how dull would this experience be without the full range? Without the full spectrum of emotions and everything that we experience and go through. So even in those moments where some might view it as quote unquote bad, it's like, well, I'm grateful for this experience as well because it adds to the vibrancy of this.
Mhm. Using the keys of faith and gratitude to portal Christ. Now that the keys of faith and gratitude have been acquired, they can be used to summon the true self, the spirit of the Christ, through the portal that is in the heart. The Christic essence is, of course, far more than simple faith and gratitude. Christ also possesses wisdom, self-control, power, understanding. Connected.
Hey guys, I think we lost y'all for a second, but we should be back. Um, okay, Cheryl said what happened, lost you. Yeah, I think we're back now. If we could get a heads up from the chat, are we back on? It says preparing live stream. Let's see what's going on here.
Waiting for stream, live, recording in progress.
Says it's
Participants
going.
one.
Okay, they're saying 5-5, so I don't know.
Yes, you are back.
All right. Don't know what happened there, but let's just get back into it.
See, the internet dropped, but I am grateful, thankful that it came back almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Select and dedicate a place for practicing getting in touch with Christ. Of course, the Christ is always everywhere. Fasting helps. Practice being as still as possible, breathing as softly as possible. Focus your attention on the center of your chest, on your heart, or very near your heart. Now use the keys of faith and gratitude by summoning intense feelings of faith and gratitude while your attention is on your heart. Do this with the intention of unlocking your highest, most purest self, the Christ. When done correctly, in good faith, Christ from beyond the veil accepts the invitation, corrects for any mistakes on your end, and arrives into your soul. You become yourself instead of your persona.
Hope we're still connected. Yeah, I guess we're still here. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Um, this that paragraph is um most major religions would probably consider that witchcraft.
Which one? This one? The one you just read?
Yeah, about summoning the Christ,
Yeah.
and that Christ from beyond the veil accepts the invitation, corrects for any mistakes, and arrives into your soul.
Hmm.
That's that's a pretty intense experience.
And you don't need anybody else to do that.
Yep,
You don't
didn't
need
cost any
anything
money.
else, doesn't cost anything. It's all you.
You may feel a flickering living light at the center of your chest. The light may be warm, cool, or even burning. Accept whatever you feel and give thanks for it. Maintain feelings of faith and gratitude, and do not give way to fear. Allow the light to fill and become you, or perhaps realize that the light is you. Do not try to control the light, but yield to it and let it do what it will. Some, but not all, may hear a voice or receive a message or assignment. It's okay if you don't. Others receive spontaneous knowing or even abilities. Many feel profound change, liberation, feelings of awe, joy, weightlessness, or complete and total love. You may laugh or weep uncontrollably. The experiences may be different every time. Some who overly identify with a perverted persona may even receive an adverse judgment. Whatever experience you have is the correct one. Practice communing with Christ, letting go of the persona and just being your actual self as often as possible to get good at it and reap all the wonderful rewards.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this would be a good time to maybe talk about how people invert this idea to say that God told me to do this, or God told me to do that, or I had a vision and led me this way, because that this has been used because it's internal and
Well, anyone can say that they did this, but it doesn't mean that they actually did.
right, I know, but mm, I, I guess how might we see that in others if they're parading this falsely, or even somebody who believes they're doing it, believes that they're receiving this divine inspiration, but really it's just their ego and selfish interest that's steering it.
Well, the thing is since we all have the Christ within us, we all have direct access. Christ wouldn't need to go to someone else to tell you something.
Right.
He'd just tell you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do this by accident. See, some people don't have any training in gratitude. They don't have any training in faith. They don't know anything about the Christ, but it is just their nature
Mhm.
to have faith. It is just their nature to be gracious. And they just happen to it's just their nature to be in alignment with the Christ. And so they just spontaneously commune with the Christ all the time, and they don't have a name for it. They just know that they feel love and that they're a loving, wonderful person. So like, so like, so So what would happen is that if someone is okay, so let's say I'm like, listen, I've done this. I'm in communion with God, and he says we need to eat all the Irish. Like, what does the Christ within you say about that?
Yeah.
So that's why they don't want us to know this. Because if you do this and you know how to do this and you've practiced doing it, no one can spiritually lie to you ever again.
Yeah.
You can't lie to Christ.
Your bullshit detector is always on.
Correct. That's why we're doing this. Because at the beginning of this article, somebody wants to know about Islam. Okay, well, if you're alienated from your true self and you're alienated from Christ, then I can tell you whatever I want.
That's how you
And
create.
how do you know? That's why that's because that's ultimately that's what this whole document is about,
Mhm.
is we're gonna, after we're done with this, then we're gonna go and start examining other religions. But what's the point of examining any of these religions or any concept at all if you're delusional because you're separated from the Christ within?
Right.
And if you're not in touch with the Christ, then you're delusional. If you're not in touch with the divine essence of your purest, highest self within, then then it's just game over.
Right.
It really is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And once large numbers of us figure this out and start doing this, then everyone that's faking it is just there. It's going to be like they're naked.
Right. Maria wrote some gematria. She said the key of faith comes to 139, which is also golden quest, vision of peace. You are love, and you are an angel. 139.
Yeah,
39 is angel, so it'd be an excellent angel as well.
that's nice. Yeah, see there's a connection between these ideas.
Hmm.
Besides the initial Christic experience, there may be many delayed positive effects. Returning to the original purpose of this article, these changes are extremely useful in examining spiritual matters, such as the truth of religion or even a specific religion. After receiving them, one is amazed that we ever got along without them and are loath to let go of even one. Becoming Christ also grants one the authority over oneself and over all that would oppose that which is Christ. What right does any non-Christic entity have to render judgment over anything? But the Christ can examine a religion and render proper judgment. The Christ cannot and will not be deceived. All right, so now we're going to go through some of the symptoms, the signs that the Christ within you has become activated, and that it's integrating with your persona. Physical signs: heightened vitality and well-being. You may feel more vibrant and alive, as if your body is resonating with a higher frequency. There may be a renewed connection to life itself, and your physical energy levels might feel more balanced and sustained. This makes sense because people that have some sort of mental health issue, often that manifests into their body. Let me see. Increased sensitivity to energy. Your awareness of the subtleties of life grows, and you might notice a heightened ability to sense energies in people, environments, and even objects. This sensitivity often prompts a desire for cleaner, high vibrational foods, surroundings, and habits. Spontaneous healing. Some individuals experience sudden or gradual healing of physical ailments. This healing may feel as though it arises from within, as old blockages dissolve, allowing the body's natural harmony to be restored. 3. Release of physical tension. Long-held physical stress, often linked to unprocessed emotions or past traumas, may start to dissipate. You may feel lighter, with greater ease of movement and a deeper connection to your body's wisdom. Emotional signs. 1. Profound sense of love. A deep, unconditional love for yourself, others, and the entire universe begins to take root. This love transcends personal attachments and is rooted in the recognition of divine unity. 2, joy and inner peace. You may experience moments of blissful peace, even in the midst of challenges. There's a growing trust in the divine plan and a surrender to life's flow. Acts of kindness and compassion. You may feel naturally drawn to helping others, spreading kindness, and serving without expecting anything in return. Compassion becomes a natural response to witnessing the struggles of others. Heightened empathy. Your capacity to feel and understand others' emotions intensifies. This empathetic connection deepens your awareness of the interconnectedness of all beings and encourages you to extend love and healing energy where it's needed. Emotional purging. Before reaching higher states of emotional clarity, you may go through periods of releasing old wounds, suppressed emotions, and spiritual imprints. This clearing process is necessary to make space for the higher frequencies of Christ consciousness. Mental signs. Holistic perspective. The rigid binary thinking of right versus wrong or good versus bad begins to dissolve. Instead, you start to view life through a lens of unity, understanding that every experience serves a divine purpose in the greater whole. Clarity and intuition. The mental chatter that often clouds your thoughts starts to quiet, allowing for clear decision-making and intuitive insights. This clarity is accompanied by a stronger alignment with your soul's purpose. Detachment from ego-based thoughts. That's the persona. You begin to identify less with the ego's desires, fears, and judgments. Instead, your thoughts are guided by love, wisdom, and divine truth. Revelation of spiritual truths. Insights about the nature of existence, divine laws, and universal principles may come to you in profound aha moments. These realizations often feel deeply familiar, as if awakening knowledge already embedded within your soul.
Because it is.
Yeah, because the Christ already knew.
You're just remembering.
Correct.
You just forgot. And that's important too, to even just to pretend to frame it that way, as if you're remembering it instead of learning new things, helps to get back and reintegrate oneself that you already know this and you are that. So yeah, beautifully said.
Energetic signs. Heightened flow of energy. You may notice sensations of energy coursing through your body, especially during prayer, meditation, or moments of stillness. This flow often begins in the heart or crown chakra, radiating outward. Expanded awareness of subtle energies. Your ability to perceive auras, chakras, and other subtle energy systems become more refined. You may also become aware of energy shifts in the environment or in others. Heightened intuition. Your intuitive abilities, such as clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, may become stronger. This deepened connection allows you to receive guidance from your higher self, angels, or spirit guides with greater clarity. Deeper connection to spiritual guides. A sense of divine presence becomes more tangible, whether through communication with spirit guides, angelic beings, or even Christ himself or yourself. These experiences often come with a profound sense of reassurance and alignment. Activation of the heart chakra. The methodology that I described originally, using the two keys, gratitude and faith, and then using them on your heart, that's actually the ancient tradition for activating the heart chakra.
Mm.
So, uh, so it's highly likely your heart chakra is going to open up.
So just in that, with the heart being the center, would you frame it that gratitude in the body, faith in the head, and those two keys used to unlock the portal in the center, which is the heart?
Yes, that would make sense. The heart chakra is important to open it up first because it balances and regulates everything else.
Hmm.
If you open up the other chakras first, that doesn't necessarily mean that those energies are going to flow in a Christic way. They can hurt you, they can hurt others,
Right.
they can make things worse, but love never makes things worse. Love always, always makes things better. So that's why you want to open up the love chakra first. You want to open up that heart chakra first and let Christ come through. And then Christ will take care of all the other chakras. He'll take care of all the other energies.
Hmm.
Christ never messes up.
Right.
He always gets it right on his first try.
So green to begin, and then red and blue simultaneously balancing, and then those merge for the violet, the purple connecting together.
Yeah.
So that's why all Christic beings teach the middle path, the middle way,
Yeah.
starting in that space. Um, yeah.
Yeah. The heart chakra becomes the center of your spiritual experience, radiating divine love and compassion. You may feel warmth or tingling sensations in this area, indicating a deeper alignment with Christ's energy. Manifestation of miracles. As your vibration aligns with divine frequencies, you may begin to witness synchronicities and miracles in your life. These manifestations are often subtle reminders of your connection to the divine. When we tap into Christ consciousness, we begin to see beyond the illusions of separation and duality. We recognize that we are not separate from God or each other, but rather connected at a fundamental level. This realization brings a profound sense of peace, joy, and inner fulfillment. Moreover, Christ consciousness helps us cultivate a deep sense of love and compassion for ourselves and others. We learn to see beyond surface level differences and judgments and instead embrace the inherent divinity in everyone we encounter. This shift in perspective allows us to approach life with greater kindness, understanding, and forgiveness. After realizing the Christ, religion and all other anti-Christic systems may seem ridiculous, absurd, and repugnant.
Yeah. They have no power any longer.
Yep.
Yeah. So Maria wrote another gematria. She did the key of gratitude, comes to 167. Phoenix rising, 167. Faithful and loyal, loves harmony, and my Jesus comes are all 167.
Practice becoming the Christ so much and so often that you never stop being yourself. Once you get to the point where a part of your attention is always on the Christ, practice should progress to the point where you identify more with your absolute self, the Christ, than you do with the temporary persona of this life. The temporary persona should be brought completely into unity with the permanent Christ. That way, if the Christ suddenly says duck, one can hear and obey. On my property, there probably is a duck. Um, every decision should be consulted with the Christ within. Pay attention to how the body feels and reacts when being truly oneself. Continuously present our personas to our actual self for examination and correction. This is how we correct anti-Christic programming and successfully manage our personas. Now that we have dealt with the first programmed persona we meet ourselves by becoming the Christ within us will guide us in interacting with all other programmed people in the proper manner. Many people will be so dependent on their programming and the system, even if it is antichristic in nature, that it would be an act of cruelty and selfishness to disturb them. All we can do is be kind and stay on the way. The Christ within will know who can be saved and who is dangerous. Before we submitted to the Christic essence, we had no real way of seeing the truth of ourselves, others, or any complex social construct like religion, government, of which there are many. However, once we receive our Christic eyes, all these ideals and institutions are stripped bare and revealed for what they really are. Furthermore, as a mere persona, we have no authority to render judgment on even ourselves. The Christ can render judgment, a real judgment with actual power that topples entire systems of systems. This is why they hide us from ourselves. This is why they fear us becoming ourselves, the Christ.
Right. And then all sin is just missing the mark of embodying the Christ. So anytime we step away from that true Christic nature, then we are quote unquote sinning.
Yeah.
So it just becomes easier to see. But it's not just a concept paraded by a religious institution. It's a true feeling and a knowing, that gnosis, because you know the Christ because you are the Christ, and so you know what's not the Christ, and you can see it much more clearly.
So, um, so like we're born as children, and we're highly Christic when we're born. But before our consciousness can unfold and develop into adult maturity, we are immediately subjected to the programming process. We're programmed by our cultures, tradition, ethnicities, habits. We're programmed by all of that, and then we're programmed by the public indoctrination systems, public school, and then we're programmed by the legal systems and the corporate systems and the religious systems. And all these programs are stacked on top of programs, and they disagree with each other, and we just become kind of this hot mess. But once we arrive at adulthood, if we're fortunate and if we're blessed, we can make contact with the Christ ourselves and start to untangle that mess. And part of our responsibility is to make sure that other people don't have to go through that.
Yeah.
And so when Christ, so we're gonna, in the next episode, we're gonna start looking seriously at the Islamic religion and culture and history, right? And so I use the example of likening religion to a prison, okay? But prisons are not the only buildings we build. We build palaces, we build homes, we build entertainment centers, we build hospitals, and so we're going to have to ask the question: is Islam a prison or is it a palace? Is it meant to protect people or is it meant to entrap people? Because not all cultural constructs are evil in every aspect. And then we're going to have to decide, well, what aspects of this structure are we going to take out and use for ourselves? So like a prison may be built of bricks, but bricks are not evil. You could build a home from bricks and it could be a good home. Bricks are not bad. But if you take those bricks and you form a prison and then you entrap good people, well, now that's evil. So not every component within the faith is going to be bad. And that's, but we wouldn't be able to tell any of that unless we're looking at this structure through the eyes of Christ.
Mm.
Because if you go at it, if you approach a religious construct and you're just your persona, then you fall under the domain of the program. And there have been plenty of people that they escape from one cult and they fall right in another. They escape from one culture and they fall right in another, right? Why? Because they didn't do so as the Christ, they did so as their persona. Being the persona separated from the Christ is an extremely vulnerable position to be in. So we had to do the article had to be done this way because if we don't approach it from the viewpoint of everyone here becoming the Christ, then I'm just talking to personas, and anything I say would just be my opinion. And how would you know if I was lying to you or not? But if you get in touch with your internal Christ and you become who you're really meant to be, then I can't deceive you. No one can. That makes sense. It had
Hmm.
to be the article had to be typed this way.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I haven't had any questions so far.
I tried to type the document in a way that it answers questions before they can be asked.
Yeah, it's the best way. Did we want to do this section too?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
How much time have we been? An hour?
Yeah, just over an hour.
Let's go for it. Um, I just started typing this story up today. Um, and I didn't type the end, but I do know it. So I when we get to the end, I'll
Or do
just
you want to save this for another time? We can. Cheryl just said, you just said cruel to disturb many who are in the programming, and now you just said to inform all to become the Christ.
well, that's different. So some you're gonna wake up and some you're not. And the Christ will know who to wake up and who not to.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why we I did it this way because there's too many individual circumstances out there, and I can't address them all. However, the Christ within you can.
Hmm.
So if you're here now on this show, or you come upon this show later, then that was controlled by the Christ, and you should go through the process. But if you're not meant to do that, and you're just meant to be a persona forever, and that's just your destiny, and that's just why you're here, then you won't come upon this show.
Hmm.
The Christ won't let you. And if you do come upon it, it won't mean anything to you.
Hmm.
So that's because because that's just the way that consciousness is distributed. It's concentrated. Like Christ has far more consciousness than we do. We're not meant to have the same level as consciousness as he does on the other side of the veil. If our consciousness was at the same level as our true self, then we couldn't even exist on this plane of existence. None of this would be real to us. We can only exist on the earth at this level of reality because we are a fraction of our absolute self. We're just a small portion of our absolute self, and that's what allows us to even be here. So do we complain? Oh, I'm only half of my absolute self. No, I'm grateful for being the portion of my absolute self that I am, and I'm not going to complain about that. And so other people are not at the same level,
Hmm.
and
Right.
it's cruel. It's cruel to wake them up,
Yeah, one, and it's counterproductive as well.
and you won't even really truly even be successful.
Mm-mm. That's why, you know, Yeshua said, don't cast your pearls before swine, because it's not for us to, we're just wasting our energy to try and share this explicit of a message or whatever the case may be to somebody who doesn't appreciate it,
And it can be
somebody, and
dangerous.
it can be dangerous for you and others. So the best thing is just to be it,
Yep.
be the Christ, and wait for those seeds to grow.
They'll come to you.
You throw your seeds on good soil. Don't spend time casting your seeds and on barren soil full of thorn and thistle, but cast those seeds in good soil, and then you have to be patient and wait for the seeds to grow. The seeds grow. What that means is like, or what that could mean is somebody starts to ask questions in these areas, and then you can, that's the invitation to share more and to go deeper into it and to share a presentation like this or whatever. But to force somebody to try and hear something like that before they're ready is cruel and counterproductive. It doesn't work, and it actually um, it actually hinders the process. And maybe an easier, if I will,
Whatever.
if I may, but maybe an easier example to see that is like the whole, um, not eating meat kind of thing. So somebody who takes that, learns, embodies that, okay, as a Christic being, I shouldn't be eating flesh, encouraging the torture of other creatures and using that to fulfill my own desires. But if they take that and then turn into a militant vegan that's out there throwing blood on people or yelling at people or whatever, that actually not only it hinders the process of other people learning about not eating flesh, because then anyone who hears that becomes more resistant and fights that, and it ends up painting a worse picture um, for those who are moving that direction. So the better way is to live that, to show that, and to embody that ideal pristine version of health, And then when people start to ask questions about what you're doing or how it's going, then that's the invitation to open and send the message. So it's subtle, but it is very different and much yeah. So that's
The
all I want to share.
the other thing too is you don't always know who it is that you're talking to. Um, you might be you think you're speaking to the individual, and really what you're speaking to is the program that is possessing them. And the focal point of that program could be aware that you're speaking to them. So like let's say that if someone is possessed by the spirit of a certain religion, and you start trying to tell them that their religion is a false construct or whatever, it's a bad program or it's anti-Christic in nature. um you're no longer talking to that individual, you're now talking to the religion. And so things that people have to be approached from right directions. You almost have to come at them sideways,
Mhm.
or softly or very gently. So you can't force them, but you can lead them. You can only show them through your own example. And then somewhere, you show them by being Christic in nature. And then when you let the light of the Christ shine through you, then perhaps you can thaw out their persona and thaw out their soul and let the Christ inside them, you know, make a crack in that little callus. Because that's what happens is people get hurt and then they build a shell over their heart
Mhm.
and they add another layer and another layer and they lock themselves away from the Christ
And
because it just hurts too much to
they
feel
and they had to in order to
just to
protect
survive.
themselves
Yeah.
from the antichristic nature,
I mean, the people surviving for decades, alienated from Christ in an anti-Christic system.
which is why the trauma starts at the
Yeah.
very beginning,
Yeah.
because the more shells we put on ourselves out of defense inhibits the Christic process.
And you just show up walking around, hey, I'm the Christ, I'm God, and this and that and the other thing. It's just not going to go over well.
Hmm.
Think about it. The last time Christ showed up on this world as a personification, there's a timeline in which they put him on a stake.
Yeah.
And then even in recent history, we have a history of burning churches or witches on the stake.
Hmm.
And were they really witches or were they just Christic beings?
Right.
So we got to be careful.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why Jesus only spoke in parables to the masses, because they're less likely to offend someone who from because they're not gonna understand it. They're only going to understand it at the level that they're capable. So the brilliant Christic parables are the ones that meet everybody where they are, and so that's something that can be more safely spoken in a larger audience.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Yeshua in his more private dealings with those who are really dedicated to this Christic path, I'm sure he was very, very clear, very direct, and very straightforward as far as what to do and how to be,
Yeah.
because you've got to know your audience. You got to know who you're speaking to.
Constantly in the scriptures, we would see where he would give a parable or an illustration, and then afterward, people would approach him and ask, "What did that mean?"
And those people were the seed had grown
Yeah,
within them, so they were ready for that next layer of explanation, but they had to seek it themselves. And that's why he said, ask and you shall find, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open, because that's the signal to the divine that you're ready for that next step of
yeah.
the 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 process. You're ready to move further in that Christic way.
So, how much time occurred from Christ appearing and manifesting on the earth, 12 disciples and all that jazz? How much time was between that and the fall of the Roman Empire? Few hundred years. Okay. But remember that we're eternal beings. And so we don't have to do this all in one lifetime. We don't have, got to get this done in 30 years.
Mhm.
No, we have all of time to get this done. And we're going to be on time. We're not going to be late. And it's more important to do it right.
Yep. Yeah. Do you want to save this story for
Oh,
another time? You want to go? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not a literal story. It's an analogy, but it is a true story. So, and it's about religious programming. Our story begins in a vast desert, a desert frozen and empty, no life of any sort, and no sun, moon, or stars. Great distances are traveled, only to go nowhere. Eventually, we find a form, a human form, but in the greatest upheaval. The figure is distorted, yet calm at the same time, fluxing between male and female, and every race is seen as well as all emotions. Then all humanity is lost, and the figure becomes some sort of plant animal, which then transmutes itself into every insect and consumes itself. Flames and ice rise up in a vortex, and we briefly see two figures grappling, a classic devil and Christ. The devil is furiously and hatefully screaming that he is separate from the other, while the Christ serenely and lovingly forgives and claims unity. The devil Christ is struggling with itself, trying to become two people while staying one person at the same time. The battle is horrifying and seems to have no end. The devil is tearing and cutting itself free from the Christ, while the Christ heals the wounds just as fast. The battle between the devil and Christ intensifies, and the desert begins to tremble and shake. A massive chasm, in the shape of a truly huge maw, opens below the devil Christ, and they both fall into it. There is an unbelievable explosion, and we catch a brief glimpse of a singular devil escaped and fully separated from the Christ. The victorious devil is laughing hysterically as he is blown clear over the horizon. Our eyes cast to and fro, but there is no sign of the Christ. The flames in the maw take on a peculiar nature, and we hear many sounds emanating from within, every language and dialect, every animal and insect call, and every emotional state. Then there is silence, and the flames begin to flicker and take geometric shapes. The sun, moon, and stars are blasted into the sky. Lava studded with gemstones, gold, and silver shoot out and gorge the desert. Suddenly, water paradoxically floods out of the fire. The desert is flooded and drenched. Then vines crawl out of the fire, and plants and trees rise up everywhere. Animals of every sort stampede out of the flaming maw. Finally, we see groups of humans climbing up out of the flaming maw. Some of the humans are determined to make it to the top, but one figure pauses. The man is clearly confused and terrified. Panting, he looks over his shoulder at the massive flames. In the geometric power, he sees a set of eyes and a shadow of an insane monster's face. The man tries to hold it together, but succumbs to his fear. The maw responds by manifesting hordes of demons and vicious monsters, which attack and consume the man, his group, and a few other groups nearby. At the top of the mall, we see groups of humans escaping and running away from the flames, and the scene fades away. A little time passes, and some routine and normalcy is acquired. We learn a little about this new world. The mall has calmed down somewhat, but is still active with its peculiar supernatural geometric flames. The desert has no end, so there's nowhere else to go. All life is restricted to the general vicinity of the mall, as all resources are acquired from the mall. The human family has built up around the mall, but their situation is paradoxical. They need the mall for its resources, but dare not get too close. The mall is just as likely to spit out bread and fruit as it is to spawn monsters. There seems no rhyme or reason, so the humans just make the best of an uncertain situation. So the human villages can only make so much progress, and the situation generally is not that great. Our attention is now focused on a man with his family. They are dirty, hungry, and unkempt, but they clearly love each other and are doing the best they can. In the distance, the mall rouses itself, and the man and his family whip their heads toward the sound. They are prepared to run for their lives, but no danger appeared. After a moment, the husband gathers himself, picks up a basket, and starts to head in the direction of the mall. He takes a few steps when he hears a cry behind him. It's his wife. She runs to him and throws herself into his arms, kissing his face. Her eyes are afraid and filled with tears, and she begs him to return. The man tears himself from his wife and leaves the village and starts to climb toward the mall. He's joined by other village men, some with weapons, and they help each other up the rocky path. Eventually, they arrive at the mall, and their movements become more stealthy. Cautiously, they hide behind the last of the large rocks, and they look toward the mall. The mall has spit out food and treasure, as well as some peculiar life and bizarre objects. A younger man starts to run out to the food, but our older, more experienced family man grabs his shoulder and stops him. The men look all around for danger, but they see none. The older men finally nod, and the younger man rushes out and starts eating something that he has found. Our family man starts gathering resources for his family and finds something that pleases him. Suddenly, a cold wind comes from the mall. The family man immediately stops what he's doing and heads directly away. The young man, however, keeps trying to grab just one more thing. Suddenly, out of the geometric flames emerge massive spiders, nightmares. Some men start to yell and run away while others stand and fight. The young man tries to run away, but he's weighed down by his basket. In the battle, he's tangled in some webbing. Our family man sees what has happened, but he's already at a safe distance. He looks down toward the village where his beautiful wife is waiting for him. Struggling within himself, he makes a choice, produces a knife, and runs toward the battle. Fighting to the young man, our family man starts to cut the webbing. All the while, the battle is crashing all around him. Men are screaming and dying, and spiders are shooting webs everywhere. Just as the man cuts the last of the webs, there's a sudden silence. The battle is over, but the men have lost. They're all dead, and the spiders approach menacingly. The family man knows he is dead and gives up, dropping his knife. Tears for his wife and children form in his eyes. Suddenly, from within the flaming mall, we hear angels singing, and the Christ strides confidently from the mall. With a single word, return, he commands the spiders, the nightmares, back into the mall, and they obey. He helps up the young man and places his other on the shoulder of our family man. They stare at him in shock and awe, but he comforts them that he means no harm. Together, they return to the village. At the village, food is prepared, and everyone is drawn to and gathers around the Christ. He starts to teach them many things, starting with the mall. He explains that the mall is just an emotional mirror and reacting to the emotions of the people. He teaches them how to exercise faith and gratitude and how to command the mall to produce specific things. At first, the people are not convinced, but Christ and the family man return to the mall with a few others. Christ proves his words to them by demonstrating the power of faith over the mall. He then tells the family man to command the mall. All watch closely as the family man gathers his faith. When the mall obeys the family man's faith, the people cry out with joy and begin to celebrate. Then Christ bids farewell and returns back into the mall. Time goes by, and a small village becomes a vast, mighty city built all around the mall, even right on top of it. Everything is wonderful for a while, and it seems as though nothing could ever go wrong ever again. So that's as far as I got typed, but I know the rest of the story. I'm going to tell it right now because it's important. It's part of the conversation. So vast amounts of prosperity are built up, and there's no poverty, there's no sickness. Everything is perfect. But from over the horizon, the devil returns, and he sees this city in the center of the desert, and he sees the people exercising faith and their gratitude, and he sees the massive abundance that's there. And within him, he feels angry over this and jealous, and he feels lust and hungry to consume the wealth that's there. And so he goes through the city, and he's still hooded, he's still concealing himself. He hasn't revealed himself because he's treacherous. And he goes to the mall, and he sees that the people are exercising faith and that they're manifesting the things that they need. And as he approaches the mall, uh, the things that he is afraid of appear: angels, beings of light, terrible things that he would consider horrifying. And he finds that he cannot go into it. The Christ was able to go into it because the Christ has faith and the Christ has gratitude. And the people can approach because now the people have faith and the people have gratitude. But the devil does not have faith and he does not have gratitude. And so he cannot command the mall. And so he came out of it, but he can't return, and he's been cast. He's rejected. And so he's furious over his exile, and he's jealous against the people, the children of Christ, and he's horrified over the whole situation. And so there's nowhere to go. So he just hides in the darkest parts of the city, and he contemplates the situation. What is he going to do? So he searches around and he starts to notice that some of the people aren't as righteous as the others. And so he starts to gather around himself the least Christic of the people there. And he starts to gather around himself the least righteous of the people. And he starts to build an anti-city, the outskirts. And it reflects his nature. He's not able to create anything beautiful. But in order for him to build up his anti-city, he needs resources. But he can't get them from the mall. He can't even approach, and his people now can't approach because they no longer have faith. They can only take it through trickery and force from the righteous city. And so things progress this way, and you end up with two cities, a Jerusalem and a Babylon. And so the devil, who's here, decides and comes up with a scheme because they need to take control of access to the mall, and they need more. They're never satisfied. And so they start giving out false certificates of righteousness. And at first, they don't lie. Only people that actually can exercise faith and approach the mall, only those people get these certificates. But what happened is that people stop putting faith, they stop identifying people from their works, and they start identifying them by their certificates. And once that happens, they've triggered the trap, and the devil starts putting out more and more bureaucracy and more certificates until eventually you're not even allowed to approach them all unless you have the proper license, until you have the proper certificate. And these imposters start taking control of the city of Jerusalem, and they start taking control of the levers of power, and they start taking control of the functions of the family, and they chop off every function of the family into a new department, a new house. And so you have the military, you have the police, you have the doctors, you have the spiritual people, you have the instructors in the universities, and all of these different institutions are replacing the family. And they start to consume the entire righteous city until eventually Babylon gets bigger and bigger and Jerusalem gets smaller and smaller until it appears as though Jerusalem has been completely swallowed up by Babylon. And the devil and his minions get so bold that they even start to molest and consume the children in mass. So the situation gets very desperate, and the last children of the Christ appear to be completely surrounded by these anti-Christic people. And what are they to do? And the sacred teachings of Christ have now been, which were originally passed mouth to mouth from father to son and from mother to daughter, and were accurately transmuted. They've been captured. They've been captured by the anti-Christic individuals. And now, instead of knowing what's true by the way that the truth feels in your heart, they write a book, and only the things that are in the book are allowed to be taught. And people worship the book instead of worshiping God through the Christ. So what are the people to do? How do you escape? So what happens is that the devil teaches that only when two or three are gathered at the church, only when they're gathered with permission from the state, only then is the Christ there. But what happens is that eventually the Christ actually returns. But the people don't have the faith to see him anymore because they've become separated. And so the Christ has to whisper into their hearts. But he has to whisper first into the ears of the little children because only they are still Christic enough to still hear him. Only the children are still pure enough to still see them. So the children are running around saying there's this Christ, and the adults can't see him. But eventually the light starts to shine, and the Christic people realize that they're actually the majority, and they realize that the anti-Christic are actually the few, and they learn that they don't have to be at the mall to manifest anything. They can manifest anything wherever they are if there's just two or three gathered. And they don't need the license to be gathered. And they don't need the certificate to be identified as Christic. They just have to have the Christ in their hearts. So if there's two or three that are Christic in their hearts and gather together, they can manifest anything, and they can demanifest anything. And they learn that they're actually genuinely, really the children of Christ, and that the Father becomes the Son, and the Son becomes the Father, and the Father and the Son are one, and that they're all the Christ. And they learn how to let the light shine through their hearts. And then the mall just kind of goes away because now it's in their hearts. And then together they demanifest the entire disgusting, filthy city of Babylon. They just command it, go away. And they stop participating in all of the rituals. They stop asking for licenses. They stop asking for certificates. They stop asking for permission. And they just go about the Christic business of manifesting goodness into this world. And that's how that story ends. And that's our story. That's what we're living through right now. Because right now, everyone thinks they need a license to go down the road. Everyone thinks that right now they need a certificate to preach the Christ. Right now, everyone thinks that the Christ is someone else when it's actually us. We are. You are. Everyone is. There's no one else to be. And everyone thinks that the anti-Christic are the majority when they're actually the minority. Things are inside out. See, the parasites can't directly access manifestation because they don't have any faith and they don't have any gratitude. So reality doesn't work for them. They have to take it from us, but they can only take it from us if we're separated from the Christ. And they can only take it from us if we don't know who we are. Once we know who we are, then we can stand up in our power. That's the meaning of the story. And the mall is actually really just a construct of reality. See, if you're living and you don't know about faith and you don't know about gratitude, well, the physical construct of reality is bigger than you. There's always someone out there bigger. There's always someone out there with more money. There's always someone out there with more authority. How are you supposed to do battle with the bank when the bank is so much bigger than you? How are you supposed to do battle with the legalistic system when it's so much bigger than you? If you're alienated from the Christ and you're just doing battle as you yourself, the persona, you're going to lose. Sooner or later, they're going to get you from the left or they're going to get you from the right. But when you have the Christ within you, and you know who you are, and you have the ability to exercise faith and gratitude, then you're bigger than them because you're unified with the construct of reality. And then when they try to hurt you or they try to take something from you, the construct of reality stands in between you and them because it's obeying the authority of the Christ. That's how we win. That's how we win, by exercising faith, and let them fight our faith instead of fighting us. It's literally how that works.
Mm. Right. And even our frame of reference around viewing some externalized source of what we need becomes realizing that that's internal. The representation of them all being this external place to gather resources then becomes an internally created, uh, yeah, infinite resource generating machine when we step into our true nature.
Yeah. So that's the way the way the story ends, is that the same way that the devil couldn't go back into the mall because it was too bright and the darkness can't stand the light. When we let our light shine, then the darkness can't approach us.
Yeah,
That's how it works.
that's powerful. That's awesome.
I'll finish the story. I'll finish typing it out. There's some typos, and then I'll we'll publish the document on Justin's channel.
Yeah, yeah, I'll make sure that the documents on where I post the video on my site. That's just an easier place to host it. And yeah, this has been another amazing presentation. Thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Oh, you're
It's
welcome.
been very helpful, and I know others have really appreciated it too. So are there any other questions or anything anybody wants to talk on before we start wrapping up? And was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, so the next one. So I'm going to start. I'll finish the story. I'll fix the typos. We'll publish that, and then I already have all the information on Islam assembled. I just have to organize it. So let's say 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
I got
see.
a lot to do.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So just stay tuned for an announcement on that, whether it's yeah, 1, 2, or 3, or however long it takes to get that, because we just want to make sure it's done right. And
Yes.
um so yeah, if you have any questions on these topics or on Islam that you want us to cover, just feel free to message me or Darth any which way, or comment on anything, any post, and we'll make sure we get
Yes.
those
So
answered and addressed.
so yeah, when we're measuring Islam, we're not going to be measuring it against our personal preference or our personal culture.
Hmm.
We're going to be measuring it against Christ.
Right. Yeah, that's the only thing you really can
It's
effectively.
yeah, it's like so I've done contracting, and I'm trying to install a floor in an old country home, and it turned out that so the floor is like wood panels, right? But the house was crooked. It didn't have a single straight wall. And so no matter how I turned the floor, it didn't look right,
Hmm.
you know, and that's the way it is when you're trying to look at something without the eyes of Christ. In order to build a stable structure or to examine it, you need a good square, a nice, good, perfect square, and then you make a one square corner and you start building off of that, and then you can make a stable structure.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at a building, the building may look stable and you might not be able to tell the differences, but you put that square up against the wall and you're like, oh my God, this thing's off by like 9 degrees. You start running that square and you're like, wow, every 20 feet, that wall is off 4 inches. And by the time it goes 40 feet, you got a half a foot deviation, and that's the building's no longer balanced.
Yep.
But you can't tell without the Christ.
Yep.
So that's why we had to spend so much time on it.
Yep. Yeah, I had to have that solid foundation built on solid rock. If we're continuing to work on a foundation built on sand, then we're just wasting our effort because it's just going to blow away. There's no congruency, there's no consistency there.
Yes. So yes, I see the comments. Thank you for all of your kind words.
Yeah, yeah, appreciate it, guys. And yeah, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up this one. Thank you all for being here today, and um yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for all the kind words. And yeah, any help going towards Darth is always appreciated. So I made sure to include his links in the comments.
Thank you.
Donations just help to make sure that he can dedicate more time and effort towards this, not having to worry about, taking care of other things to make sure his family and everything stays afloat, because that's first and foremost the priority. But any help in that can just make sure that there's more time dedicated to doing things like this. So
Thank you.
yeah. So yeah. Um, and just for the amazing, like the information presented here, that could easily be a book that you'd have to buy somewhere. So he's gonna, as he does with everything, he puts it out there for free. But that's where the kind of, just if it's helpful for you, just think of what other people charge for their services and things like that. Not that you have to consider that every single time, but just something to know, like, we're doing all of this for free because we love to get this message out there. But any help that you can do just makes it to where we can go further and longer within that. So thank you all who do. And yeah, so we'll just go on in there and stay tuned for an announcement on that. We will continue on with the series of other things. I think we're going to continue with the Gospel of Thomas on Wednesday, so that should be another fun one to go through. Um, and then everything else. Quest Time on Movie Watch Party has got other couple of things percolating that might come into the field. So just stay tuned for announcements. And yeah, love you guys. Hope
Yep.
you'll have a
Love
wonderful
you all.
hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. And take care. Bye, y'all.